This is another episode of the Vialle MX post-race show, an opportunity to reflect on the fifth round of 2025 Pro Motocross, which was held in the sand of Southwick. Of course, before we go any further, Southwick has been made insignificant in the minds of everyone in the industry, as the tragic loss of Haiden Zing on Saturday as well actually has dominated the hearts and minds of everyone in this sport worldwide. Zing was an amateur standout, yet I think the outpouring of love and support says a lot more about who he was as a person rather than just how fast he was on a bike. I think that the one thing to take away from all of the tributes is that will be his legacy more so than just a fast dirt bike kid. And of course, it was only right to hit that off at the top because, as I said, Southwick is really quite insignificant, quite irrelevant compared to what's going on in the sport at large. But nonetheless, we will discuss Southwick round 5 of 2025 Pro Motocross, round 22 of the SMX World Championship, and all that happened in Massachusetts. Made possible, of course, by Decal Works, Yamaha Motor USA, Motorex, Yoshimura, and Fox Racing. Thank you to all of those companies for their support of this podcast. I'm your host, Lewis Phillips, as per, joined by Michael Lindsay. How's it going?
It's okay. Yeah, first off, I match what you said. My heartfelt condolences to the Zing family, to Aiden's dad, Bob, to his little brother, to his mom. I've met them a few, they're SoCal natives. At least Aiden is seen him at the track plenty, talked to him quite a few times. His dad's fairly involved in the sport. He has a big printing company that does, they've done wraps on semis and do a lot of promotional stuff for teams and KTM and stuff like that. So very involved, very, very nice people. And yeah, everything you read about Aiden is pretty spot on from my personal experience. Just such a nice kid, such a respectable kid, very mature for his age, the way he handles stuff, but not like an over seriously kid at the same time. So other than that, trying to think, travel was unique. Poor Sean in our group got stranded in Hartford, and I barely made it home. I think I got home at 3 a.m. out of LAX. All of our flights got messed up. So yeah, just trudging through the day. Welcome back. I'm glad I'm not hosting this. It was a hard. What did we do? You were out for 2 rounds of post-race show, Big Lou?
Yeah, we didn't do well. There wasn't one in Thunder Valley, was there? But obviously I wasn't on High Point, and there's going to be people that are thrilled to have me back, I'm sure. I can feel the positivity.
You don't sound that thrilled to be back.
Well, it's a road. It's a road.
It's a road. You're still climbing. We're grinding. We're getting back to our place.
It's a process. But what isn't a process? Or what? Either you could say it isn't a process, or it is in fact the world's longest process, is 450MX trying to dethrone Jett Lawrence, which with each week that passes, it feels more so as if this is a look into what the future holds the next 7 years, perhaps. 5 overall wins out of 5, 8 moto wins out of 10. We're going to get Chase Sexton back at Redbud, so that's another threat. But yeah, coming up, it doesn't really seem possible that Jett's going to lose much. I think that despite the strength of the 450MX field, I think that it's quite likely that we perhaps see him win every overall. Of course, the moto streak ended very early on, but every overall seems more than realistic.
It's getting there. I feel like Southwick, and not, this isn't a negative, of course, to Janeway's, but his performance, particularly at Southwick, kind of, sucked the air out of the room, per se. Definitely 2 commanding starts. The opening, kind of, we talked about, even though he commented that because, particularly in the sand, you kind of have to push to keep everything working right on the bike and stuff. Still seeing how much pace he had in the opening couple laps to build a gap and how quickly it would happen, and then watching him just settle in and manage. It's kind of the thing everybody sort of brings up with him after the race or press conference about how much he still really has in the tank. And, Jett's a really good sport about it, and is kind of playful with his answer. But every time he answers, I'm still left with, crap, I think he has more when he's really, really pushed. I think the one thing we were hanging on to early in the year is okay, maybe if he's not comfortable with the bike setup, if somebody can push him, maybe he won't he knows he doesn't have to send him. Maybe he won't go to that level, but now things have settled in enough. He's, quite dominant at what I don't know is really 100% of his ability. So that's yeah, kind of a shock. We were so all excited coming into this 450 Pro Motocross season this year, thinking we would have not a barn burner, but at least something to talk about each week and some movement. And yeah, it's beyond same old when it comes to Jett Lawrence at this point.
Yeah, and as we've said many, many times over the years now, there is just no hole in the program. I spent some time looking into his starts since he's moved on to a 450, and he's ended lap 1 in first in 29 of the 42 motos he's done, which if you're Tomac, Sexton, Hunter even, you hear that, and that's almost the most frightening statistic of all, because if he's doing that, then what on earth do you do to stop that? I don't know. You can't give him that advantage. I tweeted it yesterday during the race, but in comparison, Tomac has started 198 450 motos now and has led on lap 1 just 19 times. Percentage-wise, that tells you the story. Is Eli Tomac going to beat Jett Lawrence? Well, I present you with those numbers right there, and they tell you that whether it's possible or not, it's not being tackled in the correct manner. Eli's not being given or giving himself the shot of success that he needs, because maybe he can match Jett Lawrence, but there's no way that he's going to outride Jett Lawrence and come from 7th to pass him.
Yeah. I will say, and I think it's waiting too much for it to happen. I do still, at the end of the day, not to be corny, but let's go, the terminology when you talk about Eli beast mode, when he's in a flow state. I do think, you take the entire season, I wouldn't be shocked if Eli one moto this year clicks and can come from a 5th or 6th place start to challenge Jett. But I think of that as that extremely rare moment where everything clicks for him and he goes to that level. It's just not something that's feasible week in and week out. And even the weeks and weeks out, depending on the tracks and the condition we're talking about, I'm not saying like Eli always could get there. I just think, there is that one-off opportunity. Yeah, the rest of the time, you can do all the motos you want. You can do all the work you want. It sounds like the most obvious thing in the world, and I know there's so much more that goes into it, but when you hear people joke about, the amount of work the HRC and Jett have done on starts and starts map, and Hunter comments about how many starts, I would tell anybody else in the field, you screw even riding during the week this point. If you cannot outstart him, what hope do you have?
It's not necessarily a theory that I subscribe to, but the work that the Lawrences do with Honda HRC Progressive is very in-depth. They're very much integrated into the team. The team is integrated into their program. They are one unit. Is this perhaps where we see holes in what Tomac does, being isolated from his team, no matter what team it is? And is that where maybe we see more weaknesses there? Could that be a reason that maybe the sport points to in the next 5-10 years when a rider says, I want to move away, and you go, well, Eli had weaknesses, and maybe that could have been combated if he was more involved like the Lawrences are with HRC?
I get your point, but I guess the interesting one is when you say that the Lawrences did move, but they built, they definitely built the program around what they do. The size of the HRC team helps with that the 2 450 guys and the one of the 2 250 guys are at the Lawrence compound, so it's become the secondary home. But no, I do agree with that, like in the sense of when you look at Eli's situation, I think if you're chasing, like I've even had this conversation, man, it's been over a year. I can't remember if it was outdoors last year. I briefly spoke to Brian Deegan, and I think they're aware of that with their situation with Haiden. Like people I've spoken to in the pits look at what the Lawrences have built with themselves with Team Honda HRC Progressive, and they kind of like, if you're going to truly be competitive with them at any point, you're basically going to have to somewhat duplicate that. And that's getting the people around you, whether in Star's case, you're at their facility, or let's say your Eli's case, if you almost had a team within a team built around you that worked with you, which there for a little while, he kind of had that. It seemed like with, we would always kind of point to him and Gilly being very close and him being his guy. But of course, the Lawrence's situation extends to every facet of the team being so integrated. And yeah, if we look at the next decade of the sport, like I would argue, say, look at Chase's situation. It's like, man, Chase potentially would have to maybe do something like this even. It does when you look at all the tools they have. It's like, well, how do you expect to beat them if you're not at minimum playing with the same level of toolbox in a sense? Because I think at this point it's pretty hard to fathom the basics of fitness, technique, and on the bike speed. It's going to be very hard to beat a Jett at those things. So you need to match in other areas to figure it out.
Well, it's the stability as well. Like if you look at it from a wider scope, the stability that Honda HRC Progressive and the Lawrences have is second to none. There's rarely news coming out there that the situation's been rocked or there's staff changes or anything of the sort. And it doesn't really seem like anything would change moving forward either. Yeah. And I think that's something that perhaps other programs can't quite emulate.
Yeah. I mean, they've had some staff changes in their time. They lost their main engine guy that they brought over with them. They've had a little bit of crew chief movement around changes, but for the most part, like I said, it's been very stable. And I think to a testament to that program and not over involving themselves with riders, like they have a tight knit group of riders, but the team has grown. There's a lot of support staff there, and there is so many knowledgeable people involved that when they do lose one person, it's not the complete end of the world. And with their connections, I think the allure of working with them, it seems not too hard for them to, plug the hole. For instance, if something does come up, I think they're able to acquire, recruit talent to fill those gaps when it does come up, and they seem to do it very seamlessly, where we've seen that happen with their teams. They also lost like a main electronic guy, Ricky Rocco, in this season, went to Cowie. So they've lost some main people here and there, but they seem very prepared to handle it when it happens. One other thing to touch on with Jett. So my interview, I spoke with Hunter, and one of the things that got brought up was, he's talking about on the podium about even he's kind of sick of seeing the A-team beat him. So I kind of brought up like, hey, probably the general fan sees you on the weekend, you two running 1 and 2, and they're just probably thinking, yep, that's what it's like during the week. Hunter trying to chase Jett. And I says, it really like that during the week. And, he kind of batted around a little bit, but was like, no, it's a lot closer. Yes, Jett always has that little extra bit in him. But then he made the joke. He goes, I'm starting to swear that my brother just sandbags. Because he was showing about how much closer it is during the week. Then we go to the races, and it comes back to that comment I made, like, Jett has that little bit extra, but then theoretically, it feels like he still has a little bit extra sometimes we don't even see in all scenarios.
I mean, yeah, well, look at his win margins each time. I think he won a second moto by just over 20 seconds. It was the third time that he's done that in the 450 class. And I would argue that Jett can win by 20 seconds a lot more than that. I think that more often than not, he's riding within his limits to a degree. I'm actually trying to figure this out at the moment. I'm running the numbers on Lawrence, Tomac, and Sexton to see how low Jett's win margins are compared to the others through outdoor careers. Because I think that could point to a level of confidence and, again, stability within Jett, whereas he doesn't necessarily feel the need to destroy everyone. Because if you look, there are numbers from Chase and Eli that are so much larger. And whilst you could look at that surface level and say, oh, that's just domination, that's incredible speed, maybe it actually points to something greater from a mindset perspective, and something that is Jett's greatest attribute, which is that he seems to be very easygoing 9 times out of 10.
And what's crazy with that is, like, I overheard a comment with one of Hayden's, because what were Hayden's 2 margins this week, and one of his margins was fairly larger. I was listening to his team manager and his dad and trainer stuff talk to him after the race, and he mentioned like having to, during the moto, continue to challenge himself and try different lines and kind of like try things to keep himself sharp in the middle of the moto and keep himself pushing. Which I understand, like, again, we've seen some huge margins out of an Eli, a Chase. And I feel like a lot of those guys, you talk to them about settling in, and some guys don't believe in that always, because I think they think, there's almost a higher chance of making a mistake when they're just not in the zone and they aren't trying to just think through everything and hit everything perfect. So it's one of those things, like, as much as, like we say, as easygoing as Jett is, to me, he's truly mesmerizing in the sense you just kind of wonder what's going on in his head that he can manage a race like that and seem to settle in, but not make mistakes. Like, yeah, it's very interesting from a psychology standpoint.
Yeah, we just never quite get there with Jett because he is so loose and so fun-loving.
You want to sit him down and have like a very serious conversation and be like, please, I need to know this.
Yeah, I don't think we're there yet. But where we are is with the stability, with the starts, all of these S's, I think Yoshimura can take a lot of credit for that as well because they've been ever evolving with Honda HRC, both sides of the pond, for some time now. Obviously been involved with the Lawrences for some time now. And there's so much talk about Honda HRC starts and most likely comes down to that power within Yoshimura exhausts. And you can head to yoshimura-rd.com to see what's available for your motorcycle and take advantage of similar speed, power and confidence that comes with that. Sticking with the Lawrence theme, another good race for Hunter where he was clearly the second best guy. Hunter, I don't want to call it a slump because it really wasn't, but comparatively to where he was last year and where he has been the last 2 rounds, there was 5, I think, or 5 motos there from Parla to Thunder Valley where he missed the podium. He was never out of the top 5, but there's certainly a marked change from Thunder Valley to where we are now. 4 consecutive second place moto finishes, 2 consecutive second place overalls. I still believe that Eli is the second best rider in this series, but I almost feel like Hunter is making that more of a conversation than it was previously, and certainly more than anyone anticipated pre-Fox Raceway.
Yeah, I think a lot of it still comes down to our earlier conversation about start. I think Hunter is more dialed in starts, early intensity. That is a really tough one because based on, it's a smaller sampling, but the recent run for Hunter, yeah, there's an argument of will he, I guess, in a sense, supersede Eli potentially as the second best guy in this championship. And as Hunter starts to rise, I feel like Eli is also the opposite, like hit that little bit of a slump. And I'll get to kind of asked him about something with that, about his first motos. He kind of admitted to just getting stuck in people's paces in the first motos quite a bit, where Hunter just doesn't seem to have that problem right now. He was, maybe the first couple rounds a little bit of a victim of if he started, he would start kind of settle into a 4th or 5th place pace pretty easily, but he's definitely found a little bit more lately. And I think part of that is partially the bike side of it. Again, Hunter is a little more sensitive than Jett, I think, to the bike setup stuff. And, you talk to his dad and the team, and some of that comes down to Hunter's build, just not being able to overcome some of the rear instability as easily as Jett could, even though their setups are so similar and we hear that kind of stuff. So I think as they've gotten him a little bit more dialed in, I do wonder because there's just certain things that Hunter does do so well. Let me hit you with this one. Who's the next person to take a moto win away from Jett? Is it Eli or Hunter? I lean personally towards Hunter because at this point he's the only person I think that can outstart his brother.
No, I still think it's Eli because I still think Eli does have that moment where he does get a start, like we saw High Point Moto 2 or Hangtown Moto 1. Like, it does happen. It's just somewhat of a rarity. But when it does happen, you know what's going to come. You just can't count on it every single time. I think, but even Hunter's improvement, I think that again comes down to the stability of HRC again. And again, you're not going to get this with every team because there is a family aspect that helps. And obviously you can't replicate that. But if these teammates, if we just put a blanket term there, are working together as closely and as close-knit as we see, you're not seeing that anywhere else, and there has to be advantages to that. I think more credit needs to go to the team structure that's been built at HRC. I really do.
I would think the long term, outside of just, and I don't mean this like in a sense that Honda is, but this is just theoretical. Outside of a potential shit can of a bike in a couple of years, like if they just somehow blew the production model that badly, even like what they ran this year, as long as the platform is 80% there, 9% of the way there, when you have the two of them working together, the way their structure is, there's just, I don't know, there's no doubt that they're going to figure it out. So when you look at the length of their career, particularly Jett's being longer, you look at the next 7 years, 8 years, almost decade. Yeah, I would think if you were any other team, it's beyond trying to sign the right guy to go racing with Jett. I think there has to be a lot more planning into what the entire format structure of the team is, what the goals are, what the focus is with the motorcycle and different things. Because you look at what they've got going on, and it's like it's kind of outside of just other teams going ham and buying up all the talent inside the team that works on the bike, and outside of just if all of a sudden Honda just found themselves disinterested in dirt bikes in a couple of years for some random reason because of a management change, like how's anything really going to change there? To your point that it's so stable, and I don't see a reason why anything would change that stability to any notable mark over the next almost decade.
Well, if anything, what would upset the stability with Jett specifically would be the torn ACL combined with a new motorcycle and the agent drama, but that seemingly as a group has had very, very little effect. So I don't see anything more serious than that trifecta coming, and that's done absolutely nothing to his on-track ability. So yeah, I think once again, buckle up, because I don't see this changing for the long haul. And it's actually curious, again, not to harp on this, but speaking of upcoming upheaval, Eli's going to have it, Chase is going to have it, Deegan's going to have it in the form of a new class. There's going to be a lot of change around Jett competitor-wise, and then there's just Jett and Hunter, who I think will take advantage of that as well next year, who's just continuing trucking on.
I will say the one thing I think that's going to play into Deegan's hand, it's not immediate, but it's long-term, is, okay, we've seen Cowie get aggressive with them going for Jorge and now for Chase. There was talk a year ago that they were entering early conversations with the Deegans and that they wanted to be interested in that conversation. In regardless of anybody, we've kind of heard that Yamaha, under the Star Racing management of the 450 program, even though Yamaha still, it's their budget, and like they're running into not re-upping Eli, like there's a finite amount of budget. I would venture to say that Haiden could probably get a more valuable base contract elsewhere, potentially. But stability, they have built a system there. They have built certain people there. They're working towards that. Like, just stay, if it's all clicking, like they will hopefully continue to stay the course and build that, because they're going to need that long-term stability to take the fight to the Lawrence's potential when Haiden moves up.
Yeah, and the Deegans are building their own facility in Georgia. So even though the Star facility is there, they're kind of taking a leaf out of the Lawrence book a little bit. Maybe we're already seeing a shift in the sport to adapt to what has become the new success formula. I think there's certainly an argument to Eli's isolation very much being a thing of the past coming up, and that just... on paper, it doesn't really make sense as it does it? It's only because Eli's such a unique character, but also phenomenal talent, that it kind of can work.
Yeah. Well, I say that again, is the isolation. Let's say it's just a different scenario. Let's say the timing would have been different. Let's say the Ducati project was maybe a little farther along and Eli wasn't so at the tail end of his career that it wasn't worth getting a shot. Like, that's something, even though you could say he's isolated, like, what if that program would have worked out and they would have, it kind of built around him, even though he, in a sense, we're saying isolated. Again, the Lawrences aren't where the HRC race shop technically is, but they've built such an infrastructure and the team around them, theoretically you could do the same. So I don't think just Eli, in the terms of when we're saying isolation, is not just, oh, he's in Colorado. It's isolation from being involved with the team, which takes a pretty, I think, unique approach. Like I said, we've seen, I'm sure every rider and their parent, their little group would love to have what the Lawrences have with HRC, but I also think it's very hard to get that trust from a team and get to that point. Not just everybody's going to be able to copy that model. It's going to take a lot of work, and that's, again, we even talk about the Deegans right now in Star, and I still think, they're, what's where I look at, kind of like tiptoe of exactly how you do it, because it's like, well, the facility's there, you're kind of building your own stuff. Do you, how much do you want to be on your own island like Eli versus how much you want to be involved with the team? Like, you got to strike that perfect balance, and not everybody's going to be able to do it. Again, the way that it's happening right now with HRC or Lawrence is, it's a very, very unique combination. And the last thing I'll joke is, if you're any team, I'm sure you wish you could copy it, but good luck finding two really fast brothers with a dad that's really involved with the team, and they've hired, and they have all the right trainers and mechanics stuff they built around their own program. Good luck finding the replica of those two.
How confident are you that Eli wins an overall this season? Without doubt, or?
I still think I'm 50-50 at this point. He's the only, in my opinion, he'll be the only person to take. I was gonna say I think he's the only person to take an overall, but I could also see just that weird, because Hunter could also be a very easy 2-2 at a lot of races. All it takes is a little something weird happening to Jett in one race, and Hunter goes 2-1 to Jett's like 1-2 or 1-3. There's just a part of me like I'm not going to subscribe to Jett going not perfect season, but I guess you would call it undefeated, which Carmichael has one of those where he had all the overalls but not all the moto wins. I still think Eli and Hunter can pick up one each, but we're also running out of, we're halfway there, but we're running out of it very quickly in the same breath.
I guess similar to what we said about Jett, I would love to get inside that head of Eli's to see how he assesses the situation at the moment, truthfully. Because I would argue that Southwick was the first time that we saw him maybe defeated. Like, after the first moto, it very much seemed to be standing on business and like, Moto 2, here we go. After Moto 2, I mean, he said it, like, yeah, they were faster. And I don't feel like you get that from Eli a lot. I mean, how many times can you say that where Eli just kind of has nothing? And I wonder how he processes that.
I agree, because after the first moto, I was right there at the 10. I listened to them. They all have bike feedback, but Eli seemed pretty confident. He gets off the bike, looks right at his dad, and Jelly goes, "Hey, we got to go to the stiffer shock spring. We got to do this, and I think we'll be good." And he seemed like very confident in what he was saying, like, let's make these changes and I can go. And as much as we talk about, Jett and Hunter's amazing technique, it's like, okay, Southwick is a track that Eli can just hammer down on. And yes, I think his bike looked better in the second moto. It just didn't come together. And there's part of me, because like I talked about press day, there was kind of the jokes, him talking about doing the cattle, all the stuff during the break. And I was like, okay, so he had the break, and he talked about really not changing much, just taking some recovery time and putting in some normal training. But I asked him, I'm like, the series is kind of split into threes and outdoors. Do you think you can just hang in there and make it happen, the run happen at the end of the season? Or do you need to make it happen in this middle portion to be able to go down to the wire on this championship? And I mean, I think it's obvious it's the middle portion. He said that he felt like in the next, 3 to 4 races, he needed to clot back in and get it to the point that they could race for the championship on the bottom 3 or the final 3 races. And I know Southwick is just one of the 4 samplings, but we're not trending that way now.
Oh yeah, championship's over. But it was over before Southwick, in my opinion. Again, if I was Yoshimura, I'd start etching one of those special graphics into a pipe with a number 1 plate and whatnot. Because, I feel fairly confident that we are trending in one very clear direction. The only thing that... Am I shocked that Eli hasn't won an overall yet? No, because it's only been 5 rounds and, anything can happen and Jett's great. But what I am surprised at is that he's not been in the top 2 in both motos that are around yet. That's a head scratcher for me. I mean, we know, again, the starts are inconsistent, hit and miss. But, yeah, that's a head scratcher for me, just because I think that although Eli can't get to Jett, I feel fairly confident that he can overcome everyone else in 2 motos that are around. But so far, we haven't even seen that.
You would think, but yeah, because that's one of the things I challenged him on was press day. I said to him, from my point of view, I said, you've had a couple motos this year where I asked him, I'm like, is the pace of a J Coupe or a Plessinger, are they riding so well that when you're getting to them, like you just legitimately can't make it happen? Or are you getting stuck in their pace? Because particularly in first motos, and that's what he commented, he said he felt, yes, in some first motos this year, he has really struggled with hitting those guys. And he didn't discredit him, say he was fast, but he did say he just kind of gets stuck with them and doesn't execute and make it happen. And yeah, that's, like you said, that's the part that's almost surprising to me, because you look at the pace he gets to them sometimes, you're like, okay, he is the pace. Yeah, he's not probably going to catch Jett. He's not going to catch Jett, but he should get to second. We should see a solid 2-2 out of him, and he just keeps having a moto, particularly usually first ones, where he gets a little bit stuck in somebody's pace and just doesn't execute. But like I said, on paper, he should, but it's not happening.
peculiar to see Justin Cooper take fastest qualifier and then just have no starts in him at all, especially considering Justin Cooper's history as an amazing starter. And I'll just leave this with you because the audience can ponder what they want to do with this information. 16 450 motocross starts, only 3 podiums, but 13 top 5s. And I don't know if that's good or bad because I can really see both sides. That's either amazing, because what consistency, so many top 5s, well done. But to convert that to so few podiums, quite shocking, and Justin Cooper should certainly have more podiums than that. So, yeah, that's the little brain teaser almost for everyone to stew on and decide how they feel moving forward. The previous brain teaser was Jorge Prado, although everyone was fairly confident of how they felt about it. Southwick was better, yes. I personally feel, and I think Jorge kind of went along these lines as well, that this was massively sand-induced. I think that Redbud goes worse. I still think Redbud is better than what High Point and Thunder Valley was, but I don't think that Redbud sees running second fastest lap time in the second moto. We don't see that sort of potential yet because very much there is still work to do. I mean, you could see Prado's sand skills start to shine through a little bit at points in the motos just by with some of the lines he was running. It's so much more flow than the riders around him. It was actually quite astounding to watch.
Yeah. When I spoke to him after the second moto, I tried to, hey, where was the improvement here? Was it as much bike or just as much as being on sand and being comfortable soil? And, I'm throwing out a theoretical here based off his body language, his answer. I mean, he did lean it to mostly being sand, and kind of the vibe he gave me is maybe like 10% bike, 90% that he was just more comfortable in the sand. And I kind of talked to him. I'm like, man, I saw you more playful than I've seen you on the bike, more aggressive, more things. And he still kind of chalked up to that's not because he was more comfortable. He just said, I needed to push because he said if I went any slower, it was going to take more. His actual answer was, if I went any slower than I was going, it was going to take 3 times as much energy to get around the track. So he just said he was kind of forcing things to happen because he said by forcing it, it was actually taking away less energy by at least being able to stay near that pace. But he definitely leaned more of it to just being comfortable in sand. He did admit, yes, they had made some improvement on the bike, but he was still very much like, we have a ways to go. And I also chalked up to like, I saw more things of you, and he still just adamant was, I don't feel like myself. You've yet to see that, so he couldn't give any like real indication there. Little bit of feedback I got from the Cowie guys. So while they were at club, they've tested 3 more engine specs. They ended up on one of those for the weekend. They're testing another engine spec next week before Redbud, and tons of they pretty much told me equal amount of change across the entire bike. I mean, if they could have gone any lower with the forks, they said they would have. They're to the point that the fork cap is recessed down in the clamps, and they're like, because the X trigs are split, they're like, if we go any farther, there'll be so little clamping area, it'll start to slide on the upper surface. So definitely some drastic changes on their part.
I think there was some confusion as well. Jorge is a sand king. He is in the category of Hurlings and Cairoli as almost inevitable in the sand. I saw some varying reports on his sand capabilities. Some people saying, of course he's a sand guy, he's from the GPs, but he's not the sand guy. No, he's very much of, as I said, caliber of Hurlings and Cairoli in the sand. So I would argue from what I know of him in the sand, that was still a massive underperformance. And again, that's kind of the vibe he was giving off. I use Cornelius Tundel as a reference. I think Latvia last year, Kegum's the most direct comparison to Southwick. Tundel was 10th in a moto, but 2 minutes and 7 seconds behind Prado. Whereas in the first moto, Tundel was 25 seconds behind Prado for most of the moto. So that tells you everything you need to know. Unless Tundel has come to America and found a minute worth of speed, there's still a long way to go with Prado. And again, Prado, so proud, such a proud athlete. I think if anyone tried to congratulate him on his day at Southwick, he would have kicked it back quite aggressively. One thing that he would have accepted was kudos for his Fox Racing gear. Again, the pink just shining so brightly on the Kawasaki. Bold, untamed, and pushing the boundaries of aesthetic, style, and design. Fox Racing's new Spring MX graphics, launching with Hello Future, disrupt the status quo and make no apologies for the interruption. Compromised of head-to-toe kits plus a slew of head-turning men's and women's lifestyle pieces. Its spirited graphic combined with dialed-in fit, comfort, and construction sends a message loud, clear, and confidently. The future belongs to those brave enough to answer the call. And just final point on Prado. I'm still seeing a lot of discussion about how slow the bike is. And now I'm seeing people go, well, look, he managed to get a start. When Prado says the bike is slow, he is not simply referencing the fact that he needs a fast bike to get hole shots. As I've said time and time again, he is a rider who uses a full 450 power all around the track. So when he said he needs more power, at no point has he said, I need more power for the start. It is for the riding. So just to, again, combat that. And again, I know a lot of Kawasaki riders from the last 4 years. The Kawasaki is a slower bike than what these other riders have ridden. I've checked notes again, and they've all said the bikes they were on before or after their factory Kawasaki experience were faster, and it was impossible to match the speed of the previous or post bikes.
I think a tough one too is, you just listen to Prado, and we talk about guys that ride low RPM, and there's a difference between like a Lawrence that's a low RPM and he's like small throttle inputs and hopping through stuff and has a lot of flow. Jorge is an extremely low RPM, like right off idle, but he's a big throttle opening guy, and you can hear it because particularly they're saying like there was so many times I'd see him hit sections. I mean, he's a very fit but a thinner frame kind of guy. Just put all of his weight, not what you see very common with someone on a 450, as far off the back of the bike as he could get and just smack the bike wide open. But you can hear he's coming off the pure bottom end of the bike. And it's a 450, yes. For the common man, it should be fast enough, but you can listen to it labor with the way he's trying to ride it. And it's not just more power. It's, I think, really specific where he needs it. And I think that's where maybe some of that struggle is for the Cowie team, because it's not just like they've had different settings they could play with in the past, but I think the uniqueness of where he really wants the power is whatever the team say like, hey, we're trying, but you can't make parts magically overnight for this kind of stuff. And when you get into maybe somebody wants that different of a power, whether it's like, you don't just make cam grinds overnight in certain parts like that. That take a couple weeks to get moving or a couple months as they continue to try through stuff. So again, another engine before Redbud. We'll see.
I just randomly remembered Majora GP last year. I was talking to Prado about going to Kawasaki, and like off record, we were just shooting the shit. The reason that conversation started is because he said, "Lewis," pulled me behind the gas truck, and he went, "Is the Kawasaki fast? Do people say the Kawasaki's fast?" Just randomly remembered that. So the writing was very much on the wall of what the demand would be all that time ago, which is quite funny to think. Great second moto from RJ Hampshire. Aaron Plessinger's worst overall result since round 1 of 2024. Cooper Webb has had 6 7th places in 10 motos. So the picture of consistency and a nice return for Justin Barsha.
Quick one on Aaron. I've noticed this. I meant to ask him after the race, but I didn't get to catch up with him. I have multiple times over the last 2 races seen him talking to his mechanics or in the pit area and him take the arm and reference like I think he's struggling with arm pump really bad right now, because he literally will take his arm in front of his mechanic and just start hitting his arm and be like visually shaking his arms, because I think he's struggling really bad with arm pump at the moment. That's kind of sounds dumb, but it's the visual cue I've seen multiple times from him over the last 2 or 3 rounds.
Or he's doing a New Zealand haka in the mechanics area. There's multiple answers to questions, and we need to. It's only right that we look at them all.
Maybe that's why I need to catch up with him. Who knows? Maybe he's learning some new cultural stuff I didn't know about.
Jason Anderson was very, very sick. Tried a valiant effort, but ultimately couldn't get it done. And actually, I don't know what happened to Colt Nichols, 40th overall. But Nichols has been, unfortunately, fairly anonymous through 5 rounds of Pro Motocross. So, but I actually have no idea what happened to him. Moving on to 250s, where, in a very similar vein to the 450 discussion, this is the Haiden Deegan show. His lap times, incredibly impressive. Deegan had the fastest lap of Moto 1, a 2:12.301. Second fastest lap was Kitchen, a 2:15.468. Second moto, Deegan again fastest with a 2:12.524 this time. Shimoda, second fastest, 2:14.951. If you want those numbers in comparison to Jett's fastest lap time in 450 Moto 1, 2:09.373. Second fastest was Hunter with a 2:10.719. Second moto, Jett again fastest with a 2:09.756. Second fastest, Jorge again with a 2:10.719. The second fastest lap time was identical in both motos despite it being different riders, which is your Christmas cracker fact of the day. Obviously, everyone has seen the Deegan-Jett rivalry.
You're talking about the watch thing?
Yeah, but then Deegan did a post about Jett balding and how he needs to go to Turkey. I'd imagine that'll be the end of it. But yeah, Deegan responded with a TikTok essentially saying that he's noticed some balding guys copying his emotes. So we actually do have a Deegan-Lawrence rivalry in the flesh. So yeah, I don't know what we do with that. I don't know where it goes from here. But that is actually happening now. To be honest, I thought Jett's thing was quite funny. And equally, I'm impressed that Deegan's rebuttal wasn't just something boring. It was actually quite well thought out. So,
fun part with theirs will be like, I saw him responding on the watch one on TikTok or something like, I'm already in his head. And I'm just like, kind of like there was an interview, I think it was on AC and JB's show with Roxon about it. And Roxon was just kind of like, it's 450 class. Nobody's really going to get into it the same way with him. It happens in 250s. Nobody's really going to let it get to him. I'm kind of curious from the Jett Haiden side of things. I don't know if it'll ever really escalate, but I do kind of ponder if it'll ever just turn into like it may come across as really intense, but in a sense almost friendly, like just jab after jab, but it never really actually affecting either of them in any shape or form if it'll just turn into one of those situations.
Oh, no, I think that's without doubt. I don't think it's going to affect... to be honest, when was the last time we saw something affect a rider like that? My mind goes to Ryan Dungey and Jason Lawrence, which is ancient at this point. But no, Deegan, ended lap one first both times, can't be stopped, similar to Jett. He's just inevitable.
Here's the simple one. I mean, there's nothing left to learn or prove in this class anymore. I'll ask him next week, but we've talked about it already plenty. But I would have to say his final outdoor race on a 250 will probably be Motocross of Nations this year.
Oh yeah, he's confirmed that.
Forfeit. Did he finally say that? So that's what
no, he said it at Thunder Valley Press Day. Because I said to him, can we get you on a 450 in Supercross next year? And he said, nah. Outdoors, but maybe pre-season, because I think that the plan is OzX Open is going to be his 450 debut, is what I've kind of heard rufflings of. But in a similar vein, I saw a lot of fans tweet that Deegan confirmed he's in for the Nations, but all I saw is in his vlog, which I watched for one of the few times.
I think it's in the press conference.
But I saw it pre-race. This was going around Twitter and stuff. But in his vlog, his vlogger said to him, all you need is... Oh, no, Deegan said, all I'm missing now is an X Games medal. And then his vlogger went, and Motocross of Nations. And Deegan said, well, hopefully that's this year. So I don't know if people are taking that as Deegan saying I'm in, but I haven't seen anything extremely concrete on Deegan saying he's in for the Nations, although we are getting to that time now where we can start asking those questions again.
Well, I was going to ask, because even I ran into Pelletier from AMA, and he was talking about the early U.S. team. I grabbed him and I said, it usually feels like a week early. I feel like the first time I always ask you is Redbud. So, I mean, that's Redbud. I'll have more time. That's literally what I want to ask in press conference. Just can you confirm Redbud number one, confirm that'll be your final 250 outdoor style race. But I mean, right now from talking to Pelletier, seems very confident, and based off early conversation, that Deegan and Tomac will both go. The second 450, of course, is the question mark. But even with Eli changing teams, it sounds like it's because it's in the U.S., it makes it so much more simple. But he will be in while still on a Monster Energy Yamaha Star Racing 450.
Yeah, and it's not super deep into October as well. We've had deeper into October, which, I mean, lessens the blow somewhat. I think, if Deegan doesn't go this year, then there's kind of no excuse or justification for going in the future. It's kind of shit or get off the pot almost as far as the nations is concerned. And Deegan this time around, who is Deegan's biggest competitor moving forward? Is it still Joe? Is Tom showing something? Is Kitchen showing something? Or is this actually a moot point and there is no competitor?
It's a moot point. There is, at the end of the day, anything can happen and somebody else might get a moto win before the year is up, maybe an overall, but it's a moot point.
Well, that's sad.
It's one like I have less hope that something's going to come out of the 250 class even than the 450 class at this rate.
Well, I've given up on both. But what I haven't given up on...
I feel like that's so... I feel bad. Let's reiterate. Not to be negative, people, but it is simply... What else is there?
It's a testament to all the Yamaha have done with Hayden's 250, because he just can't be beaten. In fact, his starts are much improved this year. I think, if memory serves me correctly, he's ended lap 1 in first in the last 4 motos, ended lap 1 outside of the top 3 twice in 10 motos. So again, speaks to the power.
Who are the only riders that beat him on starts this year? Casey and Chance? I've really been the only... Anybody else beat him on starts?
Well, he was 6th at the end of lap 1 in the first moto every year and 6th at the end of the lap 1 at the end of moto 1 at Hangtown. So a lot of riders.
And was that Casey both motos or one moto?
No, Casey was only Hangtown.
Only Hangtown, and then Thunder Valley was Hymas, right?
Yeah. And then I can't remember Fox Moto 1. I think Fox Moto 1 was just all of the top guys.
He was there because I just remember Ty hucking off the roller the first lap.
Vialle was very impressive in Moto 1 with his charge. In fact, if he hadn't crashed, it would have been interested to see what he would have had. But that was certainly one of the brighter spots in Tom Vialle's American Pro Motocross career. I still find myself a little bit perplexed at what to expect, what to celebrate, what to accept. But this is good. In fact, this is only the second time that he's had 2 consecutive top 2 finishes in America, outdoor-wise. So it's trending in a positive direction. I just still think that we can't celebrate Tom Vialle until he's closer to Deegan, because I don't necessarily expect him to beat Deegan, but my bar is somewhere closer to that position. Yeah. And Tom Vialle, of course, using Motorex, as loyal listeners of this podcast are well aware. Motorex, known for high-quality engine oils, also have an entire line of clean care and lube products to keep your bike running strong and looking great. Maintenance made easy with race-proven Motorex clean care and lube products. For the 4th round in a row, Levi Kitchen was 3rd.
Real quick, I got two Tom-related questions for you. One's a little out there. The other, I think, is relevant. One of them, I think it might have been Blair that threw out this idea, and I don't think it sounds ridiculous, but I don't think it's the most audacious thing. What if next year he went 450 SX, but still raced a 250 one more time in outdoors with Haiden out of the class? Do the full hat trick, win every 250 title available?
So I think a fan tweeted that and said, like, similar to Justin Cooper, why not even maybe a limited Supercross schedule. I don't like that. Like Tom's a 2-time world champion. He's had I want to say 19 was his first year in MX2, so 19, 20, 21, 22, 6 years on a 250. Just go. And again, with Tom Vialle's limited Supercross experience, if he's gonna race a 450 in Supercross, why not outdoors? And then my final justification for my feelings on this: outdoors just hasn't quite gone to plan for Tom, so I almost feel like a 450 will be a breath of fresh air. I was far in the weeds then. Will be a breath of fresh air and almost revitalize him a little bit. I almost feel like he's spinning his wheels a little bit in 250s and kind of in an endless loop of frustration.
RJ-esque.
Yeah, maybe. Like, I think it's going to be good for him to have a change. I really do. And what was your second point?
The second one I think is relevant. We've discussed this a little bit. Is kind of the weirdness on the weekends. The particular last 2 weeks, it's been talked about around the pits a little bit. Is okay. We all defaulted to Tom's going to move up and ride a 450 for KTM, and I I think we still think that's where it's going to end up. But what's funny is it doesn't seem to be a done deal. And for some reason, there was a lot of conversation around that, particularly at Southwick this weekend, of people just being like, why is this taking so long? Is it done? Is it not done? Why isn't it done? Is there something else going on we're not aware of? I do find it a little bit perplexing. I thought it would be the most stamped thing by now, but it hasn't turned out that way.
Were these conversations actually happening at Southwick? And for people who would know, or people who would like...
People who kind of, but never like the most direct sourcing. So that's where I'm kind of like, what is your opinion or your take is basically what I'm getting to.
So could those people...
You were not there and I didn't get to talk to you about it.
Is it possible that those people were just following your lead then? Like you were going, oh, what's going on? And they were like, oh, I don't know.
No,
Okay.
Other people coming up to me saying it.
Okay. I'm just trying to figure it out because obviously on Friday I said this to you as well. So I'm wondering now if... I don't know.
No, you weren't the only one that's what I'm saying. We talked Friday and it came up with like 3 different people that I didn't approach. They brought it up.
I don't know. I'm confused. I've heard a variety of Tom Vialle rumours, one of which was brought to me on Friday with aggression. And when I said, I don't believe this rumour, the reply from the person was, no, you need to ask because I think this is true.
Is that the crazy Cowie theory one?
No, I think that was just a crazy rumor a couple of weeks ago.
I think we figured out that one was just absolute bullshit. But
this new one sounds like absolute bullshit, and I wouldn't believe it, except for the fact that the person who brought it to me gave me some very convincing evidence that Tom was dodging this question. So I don't know. And Tom won't tell me anyway, so I don't know. I would still think that it's going to end up with Tom at KTM on a 450 because Tom is KTM. Through and through. And I just don't see that ever changing. Similar to Jeffrey, similar to Tony for the second part of his career, similar to what I thought Jorge would be, I guess, which maybe is telling that it could change.
Anything can happen.
But yeah, I would like concrete evidence of this deal being done, to be honest. Another rider looking for a deal for next year who's much more up in the air is Moserman. And I think we all deserve, or he deserves an apology from all of us because I think we all chuckled a little bit when he was first announced as a star rider. I think there was a jabs thrown around, but the Supercross was fine. There was marked progress, and outdoors he has been, I don't want to say phenomenal, but he's been solid, consistent, fast, faultless, let's say. He was sick. High point time. He's had a couple of bike problems now. There was that Hangtown crash, but
yeah,
great.
It was the first moto. He should have had a podium this weekend. He had a solid second, ended up 4th in the first moto because something started to let go with like 2 laps to go on the bike. Because for a second, you could see the body lane, like he was laboring the bike because Tom and Levi blew right by him, and it wasn't because he was fading. Something was going on with his motorcycle.
Curious, is it not that Moserman's having these problems and no one else? Like, what's that about? I don't think Moserman rides a bike especially aggressively, or he's putting it under additional strain. This is where
the only thing I can think of is at Thunder Valley, his was similar to Haiden. He was on the clutch too much and started to melt it. And I don't know if just Haiden Sand has, gone the opposite. He basically has beat that out of his head to do that. I wonder if just Moserman went back to the default of just overheating it a little bit if he just was on the clutch too hard. But then again, I didn't see it didn't overheat in the sense I'm saying it wasn't smoking for a couple laps. So I don't know if it cooked something else inside or.
Yeah, it's just a lot for Moserman specifically, which is quite odd. 10-2 for Shimoda continued his solid season. Mikko Harrop was great, but as expected, he is not of Prado quality in the sand where he's inevitable, but he is certainly, I would say, slightly better in the sand than he is on the hard pack. And his end of Moto 2 was phenomenal. 4 passes in the last 3 laps, and it's a real shame that he didn't get a start in the second Moto, because honestly, I think you could argue that he was podium worthy at Southwick.
Yeah, he was close. It would also helped if he hung there the first moto. He said the first moto that the pace was a little too much early on, and that he basically couldn't quite stay put there. I also asked him the one hey, I know Southwick is very different than a GP track, but how much did the sand come into play? And he did immediately say he felt like all the sand experience really paid off in the second moto. Just because he said of how bad the people he was picking off at the end were laboring and struggling with line choice. And he said he felt phenomenal at the end of that second moto.
Yeah, it's quite funny to see the striking difference between between a few of the guys. Marchbanks, I discovered a very interesting stat on Marchbanks. 5 top 10 finishes so far this season. Well, he hasn't fallen out of the top 10. He's never had that in a 250 outdoor season. His highest season total for top 10s is 4 before now, which is incredible. Obviously, the 2023 season on a 450, he had a lot of top 10s in the 450 class. But 250-wise, he's never done anything even remotely similar to this outdoors, which, curious to me. Still needs starts.
Yeah, and that's the problem. I think the biggest thing is 250 outdoors has always been a struggle for him because he's because he's bigger and he's fit, he always could overpower the bike. But prior seasons, if a 250 moto start was just absolute terrible, and I don't mean this without talking to him, I don't know if you would say throw in the towel or just kind of wouldn't grind it out as much. I don't care where he has started this year. He can start 5th, he can start 10th, he can start 35th, and he goes the entire moto. I think it's a huge testament just where his mindset right now seems to be really, really phenomenal. In that sense, like he just does not give up literally the entire race. And again, we've talked about this a bit, like he's there on a 1-year deal. I think he's really, really proved that he deserves to stay put or at least end up somewhere at this point. I know there's people that have suggested 450 move, but I don't know. 250, I'd love to see it because of the indoor side. And he's making it work pretty damn good for his size in outdoors.
Yeah, I would agree. I would almost lean to him going back to PC at this point. I think he's done more than, especially the way he's integrated into the Kawasaki family with Brock and whatnot. I think he's made an incredible case for himself. Jalek Swoll's been very impressive since he returned from injury. Really come out firing. 7:15 doesn't represent just how good he was.
Yeah, because he cooked the second moto. I saw them literally carrying him out of the mule. Like after they put him through, I think dunk tank, like 2 people carrying him, he was fully cramped up. So I think he cooked himself the second moto.
I think he crashed on the penultimate lap and then on the last lap as well, which is obviously not a positive sign. But before that, he would have had a 7.5, which would have been for his second race back, second race of the year. I would argue that Jalek Swoll has far exceeded expectations so far. I can't understate that enough. Or overstate that enough, I should say. In a similar vein, I'd like to give Austin Faulkner a little nod because come under a lot of fire for his subpar results. And I will admit, the most shocked I was at the weekend was when I realised that Jalek has now passed Faulkner in the championship. Did not realise that things were that dire from a points point of view. But Faulkner has had some bad luck with start crashes, first lap incidents. He was down in the first turn in Moto 1 and came all the way back to 19th, which I feel is a respectable effort for where Faulkner's at. And then the second moto outside of the top 20 to 14th, when he admittedly used too much energy in the first race and struggled because of that. I'm not saying it's great, but I just feel like it's worth saying that it's not as bad as maybe people were making out, because there are some people who are very much of the opinion this is rock bottom and couldn't be much worse. I'm here to bring a little more positivity than that, which maybe people don't want to hear, but hey, that's all I've got. Anything else on 250s?
One standout, Parker Ross, 12th overall at 13:10. I mean, Parker switched to Bar X extremely last minute before the outdoor season. This is his first, full outdoor season he's done. Actually, did combines. Did he do? I think he did 1 or 2 nationals at the end of last year. I'd have to go back and look. And he's had a really bad string the last, I think, 2 rounds with bike issues. So I don't know. Kind of Parker's one of those guys I feel like sometimes is a little, because of riding sound stuff, maybe he's just a little bit anonymous out there, but that's a pretty big performance for him.
Yeah, tip of the hat. So, but as we head out of this podcast,
the last 2 is real quick. Kind of fall under the same category of like question mark, partially because of a similar riding program, both of them getting shipped off east. But what the heck has happened? Like Rider D's been, other than the flash at the very beginning of the season, been rough, and then I don't know about Juju. I don't know. I literally haven't got a chance to go over and ask if there's something I'm missing, if there's an injury, or what the heck is going on.
I can't recall especially, but certainly Juju was better at Thunder Valley and High Point than the results show. There were crashes, there were incidents.
Yeah.
The speed from the first 2 rounds was still in the ether at Thunder Valley and High Point. So there's that. Southwick was just bad, and I think just because of a lack of experience in the sand. His KTM quote said, "That was a really bad day. I struggled in the sand, even with the work that we've been doing to improve. I just need to be better on softer surfaces." Don't forget, he actually crashed out of Southwick last year, concussion on the first lap of Moto 1. So really lacking some experience in the sand. Not exactly a justification for his results as a factory rider 18-22, but still something worth considering in his defence. And sticking in the KTM family, all being well, not official yet, but seems it's heading in this direction, we will have Chase Sexton back at Redbud. Predictions? The silence is great for a podcast. So while we're doing that, let me tell you that Chase Sexton will return with Decal Works graphics. If you're returning to riding soon as well, maybe you've been banged up yourself. Treat your bike, which may be looking banged up as well, to some fresh graphics with decalmx.com. That's where you're going to want to head to get your Decal Works graphics. So many options there. Graphics, plastic seat covers, accessories, casual and apparel. You can shop by bike. You can show products for your bike. Select your bike, your year. Customizable options. I could go on. I could sit here for ages to fill the deafening silence, but that's because Decal Works have so much to offer.
5-3 or 4-3.
Okay.
Somewhere around there for moto scores. How about yourself?
I actually was thinking exactly the same, 5-3, 6-3. For some reason, I can see one moto being significantly better than the other. Probably the second one.
Yeah. That's kind of, I feel like, the usual first race back. Maybe the first couple laps, the guys sprint a little more than you think, so you kind of miss out on the pace and you end up, around that 4 to 6 range. Second moto engages a little better, ends up with a moto podium score.
It's hard though, because I say a third in the second race because my mind is still locked into the fact that it will be Jett and Eli 1 and 2. But again, to circle all the way back to the beginning, that's not the reality. So I don't know if that means that Chase could potentially beat Eli, or if that actually puts Chase further back because that means that Hunter, Jacob, AP, etc., are riding on Eli's incredible level. I don't know what side of the coin that goes, but I think 6-3, 5-3 is about right. Maybe a 4-4. I could also sign up for a 4-4 maybe. But I think a top 2 in either moto would be a stretch too far this early. Maybe Washougal time we can start to have higher expectations. I don't know.
Yeah.
And then Cairoli in a similar vein. We get Cairoli the next 2 weeks. Where will he be?
I've
run out of sponsor reads
7.
Now, so.
Yeah. I'm trying. Sorry. 9-7.
No, that's far too optimistic. I will go. Okay. He's not going to have much motivation to continue if there's an issue.
12-9.
I had a 12 in my head. I was going to go 12-15, 12-14, 11-14.
Even at least a top 10-1 moto. 9th? 10th? No?
No, I like a 12. I really feel confident in a 12. I think maybe an 11-14. I'll go 11-14. I could see him with Guillaume and Patrell, which would be significantly worse than Matterley, where he was battling with the likes of Sewer and whatnot. But Matterley's his favourite track in the world. The conditions really played in his favour. Blah, blah, blah. I could go on, but I gave all of these reasons on the MXGP podcast, so I won't do it again. I think the Redbud will be a tougher challenge. And although Matterley went great, let's not forget his other 2 GPs on the Ducati have been more 15, 18 sort of range. So
at least he's
11-14 would be very positive, though. I think that's nothing to sniff at.
Did he? How many times is he raced Redbud? Just the one time for Motocross of Nations, or was he? Did he do the first Motocross of Nations at Redbud?
Yeah, well, he wouldn't have been injured, so I think so. Although he did miss the last GP in 2018 because he crashed out, but he wasn't injured, so I think he would have raced there. No, he did race. Yeah, he raced both, 100%. Because 22, he had the number 1 plate. Actually reminds me of a very fun statistic, which I zeroed in on before the weekend, and for it to come true, I needed Jorge to get a very specific moto score, which he, in fact, did, which has landed us with a brilliant scenario where entering Redbud, Jorge Prado and Antonio Cairoli, former teammates, rivals to a degree, not always been swimming between the two. They've got identical Pro Motocross statistics entering Redbud. Both have started 5 rounds. Both have no wins. Both have no podiums. Both have 1 top 5. Both have 3 top 10s. And then even more specific, both have 2 top 5 moto scores and both have 2 top 10 moto scores. Literally, if this was Top Trumps, their cards are identical. There is nothing separating their Pro Motocross careers. Wild.
Huh.
Stay tuned for this to be a graphic this week. Just don't know how it's going to look. Maybe it will be a top trump card. But I figured this out before Southwick, and in my head I was like, there's a very good chance that Jorge goes 5-7 or something and has one. He basically needed to have 1 top 5 and 1 5 to 10. And he had that, which has landed us in this very peculiar situation. And who would have thought as well, I was thinking this earlier, if you'd said in 2019, when Cairoli and Prado were teammates on KTM, that in 6 years, they would be racing together in Pro Motocross with Cairoli on a Ducati and Prado on a Kawasaki. That would have seemed like the most ridiculous situation ever. Because A, everyone would have laughed that Cairoli would still be racing at this age. The idea of a Ducati would have been hilarious. Most people would have presumed Prado would be a KTM lifer, similar to Hurling's. The list goes on. So yeah.
One other funny one I did. We have an interview running with him in the morning because I saw him in the pits after the race, so I caught up with him. I did ask him basically, like, is this going to be the last time we'll ever see you race in the U.S.? Do you just plan on dipping your toes in every year? And he didn't give an exact answer, but he did just basically say, like, some people think I should just be retired and done completely, but he said that, he knows he only has a limited amount of time left that he could do something like this. So he did say, yeah, as long as the pace is still there, he basically said the next couple of years he'll keep doing stuff like this. And when I tried to ask him, like, so will these be the last 2 we see you in the U.S., he, like, kind of danced around and wouldn't commit to that. So who knows? Maybe we'll get to see him again after this two race little tour.
I can honestly say I've not seen anyone say that he should retire. So I'd like to know where he's getting that from.
He said that, so I don't know. Again, I've never seen anybody proclaim it.
Ryder in the head, thinking this is what people are saying. Or maybe it's a reference to KTM, who kind of wanted to stop him racing or felt it was time. But then in KTM's defense, to facilitate a schedule like this takes quite a lot of work and it's quite unique. It works perfectly for Ducati, of course, because they need this development and this time. I don't feel especially excited about Ducati's American debut, though, purely because we've seen it race 1,000,001 times now. So it doesn't feel as exciting as the first GP, say, or whatnot, but still, monumental moment. And a monumental thanks to all of our sponsors on this podcast: Yamaha Motor USA, Decal Works, Yoshimura, Motorex, and Fox Racing. Thank you to all of them for their support of this show. Any final thoughts?
No.
Lovely. Nice and clean ending. We'll be back in 7 days' time to discuss Redbud. That's round 6 of 2025 Pro Motocross. Thank you for watching and listening, and we will see you then.